Welcome to The Anxious Voyage. If you think that title sounds bleak or foreboding, one of two things must be true. You're very lucky, or you need to get out more. On this program, we share stories of life and living. We compare notes. We discover commonalities. We accept that life is a glorious, heartbreaking thing, and we embrace and celebrate all of it. Take the ride with us. We're glad you're here. Now, here's your host, Mark O'Brien.
Hello, welcome indeed. We are glad you're here. We are coming to you again, and as always, from World Headquarters in Middletown, Connecticut. It is my pleasure and honor to introduce my guest today, Dave Wolffe. Dave developed the Anger Management Power program that's been used with more than 1,000 teens and 600 others, including parents, college students, and professionals who work with young people. It's been used with dispute resolution and teacher education students in several New York area colleges and with parent and professional groups. Dave is committed to helping young people manage their anger in positive ways, to giving them information and methods by which to curtail bullying, and to helping adults who work with youngsters save them from physical, emotional, or psychological pain. Dave has been an adjunct lecturer and anger management specialist at the John Jay College of Criminal Justice in Manhattan, teaching P.E.A.C.E, engagement, Attained-Collaborative efforts, and a teacher and guidance counselor in the New York City Department of Education. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
That description could pass as a resume. And I'm not exactly sure where to start, but I am most curious about anger management, and I'll tell you why. I always welcome my own anger, certainly within reason, because in particular circumstances, it makes everything crystal clear to me. If I'm having difficulty making a decision, if something provokes me to anger, for some reason, I feel like I can see right through it. I recognize that there are destructive aspects to angry behavior. But I'd like to know what you think about what I just shared with you, aside from the fact that maybe I'm nuts. And I would very much like to hear about your anger management program.
Sure. You're not nuts. Let's start with that.
I'll take your word for it.
It's all right. I don't have my psychology degree. Anyway, the thing with anger is a perfectly normal emotion. The problem is how people deal with their anger and what they use it for. And I think you mentioned it. When it becomes reactive and destructive, it's not very good. In your case, you use it to help motivate you. That's a very positive way to use anger. So it can be both ways, but it's really, and what I really try to look at with youngsters and adults is we need to learn how to manage anger. It's a two-step process, really. We feel it, and we don't want it to get too far. I use something called an anger scale, which measures degrees of anger. On one end, you're cool and control. On the other end, you've lost it. You're kind of bananas. What we try to do is prevent people from going up that scale and use different techniques to de-escalate the anger, and depending who they're angry at, to express it. So that's kind of, that'll give you a little thumbnail.
Yeah. Two things occurred to me, and I'd never thought about this before, but I remember reading an interview with Mike Tyson, and the interviewer said that one of the things he admired most about Mike Tyson when he was boxing was that he wasn't afraid. And Mike said to him, "Are you crazy? Do you know what I do for a living? I strip myself to the waist and get in a ring with a guy who's, at the very least, trying to hurt me." What I learned, he said, was that fear is an energy, and you have to learn how to channel it. And it occurred to me when you were talking now, Dave, I'd never thought about this before, that anger too is a kind of energy that has to be, I don't know how to put this, harnessed, managed.
Right. Well, would you like me to respond to that? I'll be glad to.
I very much would like you to respond
Okay.
to that.
Anger is energy. And as I tell people when I do this program, you can channel your energy so it doesn't become destructive. And there are a lot of different, as I mentioned, de-escalators, things that will calm you down. For example, a lot of people do physical activity, or they count, or they do different other things that get that anger, and they're using the energy, but they're channeling, as you said, it's a great word, channel. They're channeling that energy that otherwise might be used destructively.
It also seems to me that to be able to do what you're suggesting, or perhaps even to understand what you're saying, people need some level of self-awareness, some understanding of whatever they had been doing prior to constructively managing their angry energy wasn't constructive. How, I'll put it this way, do you ever attempt to work with people who don't have that kind of self-awareness and perhaps can't be reached?
Well, you know, in terms of working with kids and anger, I could just give you like the framework.
Yeah.
In terms of working with kids, the first thing to do, or with anybody, is you got to get them down that scale. You got to bring them from that energy building up to a point where if they lose it, they're going to hurt themselves or somebody else, to a point where they can think straight. In other words, rationally. And at that point, you could discuss, what was the trigger? You know, can you prevent it? There's one of the anger managers that I use is called the anger journal. And a lot of times we can't express our feelings verbally, but we can write them down. And there's 3 parts to the journal. The first part is what made you angry. The second part is how can you control it? And the third part is how can you prevent it? Now, again, that's rational, and you have to be at a point where you can discuss it, or you have to write. You can talk it through with somebody. Again, it's just another tool. I've developed, or I've had like 63 anger managers, some of them de-escalators, some of them expressors, as I said before. And I mean, there's little things that I can suggest to people, no matter where they are. Until a person is able to calm down, there's no talking to them. They're not going to go through what bothered you, what triggered you, until they're calm. So really, in working with other people, in your family or kids or anybody, the first step is to try to calm them down and channel the energy so they're calmed.
I may be on the verge of splitting hairs here, but I wonder,
Okay.
is there a difference between being able to recognize how and why they got angry, what they can do about it, how can they avoid it in the past? Is there a difference between being able and being willing? Do you ever encounter people who they're just not willing to look at themselves?
There are people like that, and there's not much you can do. Just keep people away, or try to diffuse their anger enough for them just to calm down, so whoever they're angry at doesn't receive the worst end of it. I mean, everybody isn't amenable to it.
Okay.
And sometimes it takes time for somebody to cool off, to be able to reach that stage. So if it's giving them space physically or emotionally or whatever, that's, that's a prerequisite. Otherwise, they can't. And many people just have it, and their energy is just overwhelming.
So that makes me actually think about you. Um, Obviously, you've been doing this for a while, but
Mhm.
I wonder if there were points when you first started to do it and had to recognize the fact that there were some people you just were not going to reach. Was that frustrating, or just did you just accept that as human nature?
Well, it is human nature, and to be really honest, I've done it with classes of high school students where I used to work as a guidance counselor, um, and I train kids to be mediators, and you would see kids get angry, and a lot of times when they sat down with the mediator, they say it's squashed because they had time between the incident and what happened. And yes, it can be very frustrating. There's, like in any business and in any profession, there are people you reach and people you don't. And it's frustrating, but it's a fact of life that needs to be accepted.
Yeah, I wondered if you finally get to the point at which you just accept it as fact and take satisfaction or gratification or something from the people that you do reach.
And a lot of times, Mark, I don't know whether I've reached them
Mm,
other than in the heat of something. For example, you mentioned I do violence prevention seminars.
hmm
And I love doing them because I have a chance to kind of do my program, and they're very interactive. And they're the one that I did recently was with teachers, teachers, students who are going to be teachers, people that are going through their oh gosh, slipped my mind. Give me a second. Student teaching. And I've been doing this with this particular school for probably about 8 years. And I don't know. I mean, the responses I get is, yeah, we learned something. I do a questionnaire at the end. Yes, I wanted something and I got from it, but I don't usually see the results. So
Interesting.
a lot of times it's a hope. Hey, that I've helped them help some kids or help them help each other. It's not just about kids, it's about their relationship with other people, their relationship with colleagues, their relationship with supervisor. I mean, it's a lot of things.
I don't mean this in any religious sense,
Okay.
but it seems to me you have to be faithful to be able to do that. I mean, we could substitute hopeful, but to be able to do that and to keep doing it, you have to have faith that people will come around and that you will be able to that the people you reach will outnumber the people that you cannot reach.
Well, and as I said, you don't know. When I did a class or whatever, when I was in the high school, other than seeing kids or being with, because I had to be present when the peer mediators did their mediation, there wasn't that much. I used to get referrals from the deans, and usually when the kids came in to be mediated, it was over.
Mm.
They said, like they'll say, it's squash because they were told you got to go for mediation. Okay, they did, and by that, and time does a lot for diminishing the anger. And getting space from the person or from the place that the anger took place.
Given the fact that I think we are talking about adolescence,
Uh-huh.
um, I wonder if when adolescent, and I'm going to say boys in particular, when they hear mediation, I wonder if they think authority. And of course, in adolescence, most adolescent boys, they're
Right.
as anti-authority as they come.
Well, put it this way, most of them don't want to go for mediation,
Yeah.
but it's something they have to because they were told by a dean or the principal or something like that. So I mean, the real the value of mediation is that you help anybody in mediation understand the anger and diffuse it, not just diffuse it, but end it, and possibly reestablish a relationship of who the other person in the conflict was.
Oh,
But again, it's you know, you hit the nail where I said before, you just don't know. And yes, I'm hopeful that I'm reaching somebody to reach somebody else with some techniques and ideas that I give them. I don't know if I told you, but I am revising the original book, Peace the Other Anger, Peace the Other Side of Anger. Um, whee! Little,
welcome, Dave.
yeah, you know. But I'm revising that. It's based on my program, the anger management power program, but the substance of it is still the same. But what I've added to revise it are chapters on the pandemic, which didn't exist when I did the original book, on gun violence, which you had Columbine and what was the other? You had Columbine was and Virginia Tech.
Yeah, pick one.
Gun violence is an epidemic, and also the social media, which when I had written the original book, the first edition, it wasn't as big a factor in anybody's life as it is now. So that was the addition that I added, and I'm hopeful that it should be all put together and ready for people to read in the fall, sometime in the early fall.
A minute or so ago, you used the word relationship, which I thought was brilliant, and I recognized was a key. And I learned some time ago that every stereotype breaks down at the level of individual.
Right.
And given what you do, you may have seen the video that I'm about to describe to you. I only saw it recently, but there were two young men in a street, and they were about to start fighting, and they were surrounded by a group of their peers, all of whom had their phones and were recording the whole thing and laughing. And a man came out of a house from the street and came up to the two young men who were about to start fighting and started asking them questions about who they were. And he ultimately got to asking if each of them was the other's enemy. And they couldn't answer it. And the older gentleman who had come out said, "Look at all these guys around here. They're your enemy because they're compelling you to do this, and they're looking at it as entertainment. What do you two guys have against each other?" The upshot was, A, he managed to convince those two young men who were about to fight to shake hands with each other. And there was a little piece of copy after the video that said those two young men had gone on to become friends. That couldn't have happened if they hadn't been willing to actually see each other and to at least comprehend to some degree the context in which they were about to go at it, goaded on by these guys they thought were their friends. So I again, I thought your point about relationship was absolutely essential.
Well, again, it depends on who the people are. And what that gentleman did, which was, if you can get the kids to talk and answer questions, it'll diffuse what's going on, at least in the moment. And with peers, the best way to do it is get them away, the two that were about to fight, get them away from that group and take them somewhere privately where they'll probably work it out with not too much problem. But once you have an audience, you know, it's image. It's image.
Yes.
I can't look soft. I can't back down. And this very often happens in the classrooms too. You know, they don't really want to act like whatever, but they're in front of their peers and they have to show this image. And basically, if you can, or a person can remove them from the scene, from their friends, the chances are the issue will be resolved a lot more quickly.
You know, that reminds me, without going into detail, not because I don't want to share, but because we just probably don't have enough time. When my older son, who is now 41, was 16, he got himself in some pretty serious trouble, and by the skin of his teeth, missed going to jail. But all the lights that everyone hoped would go on went on, and he straightened himself out, and now he's an amazing man and husband and father, etc. But after he had done that, when all of his peers in high school knew exactly what had happened, another kid that he had known since elementary school and played basketball with approached him and wanted him to do something equally stupid to what my son had already done to get himself in trouble. And my son said to him, Are you out of your mind? You know what I did, and you know how close I came to paying the price for it. And now you want me to be that stupid again. What I admired most about my son in that situation was that he, even at 16, he stood up to that peer pressure, and he didn't care if that kid thought he was soft.
Right. That says a lot about him. But also, in terms of looking at the dynamic, it doesn't sound like there were a whole bunch of kids around to egg him on further.
No, you're correct.
So I'm not demeaning what your son did. I think
I know that.
But it's just a matter of what might have happened if there were a group of them around.
Yeah, I knew you weren't trying to diminish anything my son did, but I understand your point. And, it's the whole crowd mentality.
Right.
If there had been a whole bunch of them around, it might have been more difficult for him to resist. I would like to take our first commercial break right now. Okay. I know exactly where I want to start when we come back, so probably good timing. So for all of us who've joined you and you, Dave, we will see you in exactly 3 minutes.
Okay.
Everybody has a story. Everyone's story deserves to be told, and the only bad stories are the ones we don't share. That's why Mark O'Brien created The Anxious Voyage. It's Mark's conviction that every story deserves to be shared, and his purpose is to give people in all walks of life from any circumstances a chance to tell their stories. The Anxious Voyage is now on syndicated Dream Vision 7 radio network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please tune in, please join Mark, and please share your stories.
Ever wonder what it's like to have your own radio show? Well, wonder no longer, because you can dip into the radio airwaves by being host for the day on syndicated Dream Vision 7 radio network. It's a fabulous way to get your radio feet wet. It's an opportunity to market your business, modality, or book. Have a guest, mention a sponsor, and take callers. Or you may want to facilitate a lesson by going solo. It's up to you. Listeners can be online, mobile, in cars with Bluetooth, or listen through Amazon's Echo by asking, Alexa, play Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. For more details, go to dreamvision7radio.com and click on Host for the Day.
You can't establish your brand's authority without a voice. That's why, since 2004, O'Brien Communications Group, OCG, has been helping companies establish their authority, find their brands, distinct voices, and position their brands effectively and persuasively. So effectively that 9 of OCG's clients have been acquired by other companies. OCG's business model emphasizes efficiency and results, not hourly billing, markups, and media commissions. That ensures OCG's advice is unbiased and its clients aren't at financial risk. If you're ready to find your voice and use it to tell your story, OCG is ready to help. You can find O'Brien Communications Group on the web at o'briencg.com. That's OBRIENCG.com, or call 860-944-9022.
Calling all authors. Have you been considering an audiobook? Well, look no further. Come take advantage of Dream Vision 7 Radio Network's unique in-house audiobook production, which includes benefits and bonuses from our radio station. Let our knowledgeable staff guide you to create the audiobook you've always dreamed of without breaking the bank. Check out our full one-stop service from A to Z, including the ACX process. Schedule a free consultation by calling 508-226-1723. That's 508-226-1723. Or go to dreamvision7radio.com.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for staying with us. I am here with Dave Wolffe today, and am very happy to be here with him. Thank you, Dave. I want to try to connect two things if I can. You mentioned in the first segment your violence prevention seminars, and you also mentioned COVID. If I'm correct in thinking that you were conducting your violence prevention seminars before COVID, what did you notice was, or maybe was not, different about those seminars after COVID?
Well, probably the biggest difference, Mark, was doing it on video.
Ah,
I do, and I love working with groups interactively. And it's like I'm on a stage and I like moving about and getting them involved and doing different exercises that I developed with the program. So to me, that was the biggest limitation. And I basically been working with one school. I had done previously, as you mentioned, many schools in New York, but now it's kind of narrowed down. I would love to work with more schools, more colleges, doing violence prevention seminars for teachers, social workers, psychologists, anybody who works with kids and others where they might benefit. And that's my hope, that they'll benefit from what I have and help some of the people who are their clients to maybe avoid some bad situations.
Well, I'm going to say at this point, I sincerely hope that your appearance on this program and the way we can promote it afterwards will help you engage with more people, because at this point, and given what's going on in the country, I can't really think of anything that would be any more necessary, valuable, worthwhile, meaningful. So I hope that comes about. Who are the participants in your violence prevention seminars?
Well, as I said, this past I was in New York called Dominican University, and it was given to student teachers who were in a teacher education program that were ready to go out and starting in the fall and teach their own kids. Mm-hmm. I've done it with different groups, but in the past, I'm really resurrecting a lot of what I do and want to do more of it. That's kind of one of the impetus for revising the book.
Okay.
Also reach out to more people. But Dominican University and the gentleman I work with, Dr. Mike Kelly, have been very supportive and seem to be very receptive. So, and I mean, in the past, I've done it with parent groups and things, and I'd like to work with parent associations and anybody whose lives revolve around young people, and so.
Well, it's also interesting to think that there are probably sort of micro and macro levels of this thing. I mean, people who are adults who are young enough to have young, maybe adolescent children are probably curious about how they can manage their own children's anger. But then I think it becomes a bigger picture, and they might be inclined to continue to carry on to help other people. I believe that if you asked people, what do you want most out of life? What do you want to be able to do? Whether they articulate this or not in response, I really do believe that what people want most is to make a difference. And I wonder if people who get involved in your anger prevention seminars either already want to make a difference or recognize by going through it they can make a difference because of what they've learned. Do you find any of that?
It's hard, as I said, it's hard. I'll be honest with you, Mark. It's hard to judge. I know that, as I said, with these young people that I work with, they're very receptive. They're open to it. We have a good time, and they feel from, I do a feedback survey at the end that it's been worthwhile for them. But the application, and again, it's an unknown. That's probably one of the biggest frustrations. But it also feels good to, as you said, if I can be helpful, if I can bring some peace to some people, some youngsters, teachers who might have a situation that would spoil their whole career, and give them the tools that may prevent them from having to just say, I'm not doing this anymore. Then I've done my job.
Yeah. And I also wonder, I'm going to say people on the street. I wonder what John Q. Citizen could learn from you. And I'll give you one specific example. 35, maybe 40 years ago, I was working for an insurance company in Hartford. And one day a buddy of mine were just walking down a street in Hartford, and a gang of, I'm just going to call them street kids, came up and were doing everything in their power to try to provoke us. To provoke us to what? I don't know. I mean, as a younger man and with a relatively hotter head, it might have crossed my mind for a second to take a swipe at one of these guys, but I mean, that wouldn't have accomplished anything. What do you think in terms of lowering the temperature, as you put it before? If you encounter people like that, is there anything to be done? Is there anything we can do? And you know what? I'm not even sure that as we age, our fear of appearing to be soft diminishes necessarily. So what do we do in situations like that?
Are you talking about the young people that confronted you?
Yeah, and my buddy and I were headed to a bookstore, and when we got in there, he just turned to me and he said, "The fear of God." And I said, "What?" He said, "Those guys out there never learned the fear of God." And what he meant was respect. They had zero respect. So what do we do?
Well, I guess the simplest thing in terms of my head is, if you're not intimidated, the game's over. It's like with any kind of bullying. If you allow the bully to get what he or she wants, they've won.
Yeah.
You don't allow it. It's like, I'm not going to use this analogy, but it's like, it just doesn't go anywhere. And as far as kids, very hard to tell with groups of kids. Sometimes they just want to be there menacing, and sometimes they're after something else, and it's hard to tell. But playing into them, or just doing what you did, walk on, and a lot of times go into a store or some other public place, that'll end it right there.
So I've never thought about this before. Again, generally speaking, are bullies looking for submissiveness?
Bullying is power, okay? And they feel powerful when somebody can just bow down or in some way give in to them. Now, there's a lot of reasons. Many people, many bullies, just a generality. I mean, not any research, but generally, if you think about it, somebody who tries to put down other people often is the one that was put down. Could be by a parent, a teacher, an older brother, siblings, any number of people. And that gives them strength and control over something or they think in their life. So that's, it's something, if they can't use that power, then it's useless.
Yeah. I also firmly believe cliches become cliches because they're true. And the one that jumps to mind right now is hurt people hurt people.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense.
It's amazing.
Yeah. You never know. You wonder and you see, and sometimes it's power for power's sake, that kind of control of bullying. But it's just, it's unfortunate, and a lot of people try it, and people who stand up to them and don't give in to what they want, they'll move on to the next person. Hopefully.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in effect, the bully is playing a numbers game.
Yeah. I guess you could look, you certainly could look at it that way.
Yeah, interesting. And I'm going to imagine then, if we accept that notion, that the bullies that continue are the ones who find more people than not who are willing to submit to whatever it is the bully's looking for.
It's true. It's true.
Wow.
Unless somebody stops them.
Yeah.
In the case of a school, now this is so common a situation, but very often a parent coming in, speaking to the parent of the bully, which sometimes will work and sometimes won't, because you might see right there the reason the kid's a bully. But, or teaching a kid to confront them. I don't want to give you my money. If they start doing something physical, then there'll be consequences wherever they are, which they might not want. But, again, they have to be visible. If they're not visible to other people, they'll get away with it.
Oh, I think that visibility is a very good point. And I think to the bully, well, I'll put it as a question. Do you think the visibility that they achieve from bullying equates to validation in their minds?
Yes.
Wow. So
see, other people see what I'm doing, so I'll keep doing it because I'm powerful. They see that. Now, if people stepped in and stopped them, like they were doing it, let's say on the school bus, just as an example, and the driver came and other kids said, "Hey, get off of him," or "Stop it." That's the end of that incident.
Yeah.
So,
I'm going to generalize and say, and I hate this expression, but people our age, you probably heard, as I did, that the best response to a bully is to punch him in the nose, and then he's going to back down. First of all, I'm not entirely sure that's true. And then I read something, actually I've seen it more than once on social media, written by a dad whose son was thrown out of school because he stood up to a bully by punching him in the nose, whether literally or figuratively, but it became physical somehow. And so the kid who retaliated against the bully was thrown out of school, and the dad rewarded him. Like, took him out for a day, bought him some stuff and all. It was like a celebration of the fact that he whacked this bully. I don't think in something like the long run or the big picture, I don't think that's constructive. Do you?
No, but in terms of the dad's thinking, and again, I don't care people read people's mind, but I think he felt, yes, son, you stood up to that kid, and I'm proud of you for that.
Yeah, well, I can definitely see that, but I'm wondering what happens beyond that.
It'll just, the thing, it'll keep going. Somebody's going to get labeled. In other words, a young man like this who stood up was punished because he fought, and that was the interpretation of wherever he was.
Yeah,
it's I guess learning and teaching kids, and I know there's no formula for standing up other than physically to a bully. If they push you and you just stop them, that's a whole different thing. But to just do, because that's part of what a bully wants. Sometimes they want somebody to fight.
Well, that's true as well.
And you can't give them what they want. And I mean, that's generalities, and I can't tell you it's going to work in every case. And, but there are other ways to stand up. Even if it means talking to somebody else who might have the power to punish the kid, the bully.
And I think that's a great point. And at this point, I would like to take our second commercial break. So again, we will pause for 3 minutes and we will be back right after that. Stay with us.
Are you ready for the quantum age?
Humanity's next step in evolution?
Dream Vision 7 Radio Network invites you to the extraordinary platform of evolutionary voices for the quantum age.
Let's explore. Learn more about this upcoming age where we bridge science with spirituality,
Where potentiality meets reality.
where we take compassion into action.
Our trailblazers and visionaries will ask the whys, the what ifs, while igniting continuous possibility.
Come along with us into an age beyond what we know today, where we can grow together in unity consciousness.
Experience evolutionary voices for the quantum age, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern on DreamVision7Radio.com.
You can't establish your brand's authority without a voice. That's why, since 2004, O'Brien Communications Group, OCG, has been helping companies establish their authority, find their brand's distinct voices, and position their brands effectively and persuasively. So effectively that 9 of OCG's clients have been acquired by other companies. OCG's business model emphasizes efficiency and results, not hourly billing, markups, and media commissions. That ensures OCG's advice is unbiased and its clients aren't at financial risk. If you're ready to find your voice and use it to tell your story, OCG is ready to help. You can find O'Brien Communications Group on the web at o'briencg.com. That's OBRIENCG.com, or call 860-944-9022.
Calling all authors. Have you been considering an audiobook? Well, look no further. Come take advantage of Dream Vision 7 Radio Network's unique in-house audiobook production, which includes benefits and bonuses from our radio station. Let our knowledgeable staff guide you to create the audiobook you've always dreamed of without breaking the bank. Check out our full one-stop service from A to Z, including the ACX process. Schedule a free consultation by calling 508-226-1723. That's 508-226-1723. Or go to DreamVision7Radio.com.
Everybody has a story. Everyone's story deserves to be told, and the only bad stories are the ones we don't share. That's why Mark O'Brien created The Anxious Voyage. It's Mark's conviction that every story deserves to be shared, and his purpose is to give people in all walks of life from any circumstances a chance to tell their stories. The Anxious Voyage is now on syndicated Dream Vision 7 Radio Network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please tune in, please join Mark, and please share your stories.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
Hello, thank you for staying with us. I am here today with Dave Wolffe. And Dave, at the toward the end of the last segment, you said, there's no formula. I connect that to something that you said in the first segment, which was about relationships. And I want to cite an example. You probably guessed from what's behind me, I've played guitar probably since before I was in my teens. And what I've noticed over all these years, and I'm not exactly sure how to phrase this, but either there are some teachers who can't teach me, or there are some teachers from whom I can't learn. And it's a matter of their approach, and maybe to some extent, and I don't want to be unfair to them, their ability to understand what I'm like. Knowing what you do, that there are no formulas, do you periodically, even if there are slight variations, do you periodically find yourself having to take different approaches to different individuals or groups of individuals?
Well, it's like a lot of other things. You have to know who you're dealing with and what they really want. And for example, I'm just using the seminar to give you for instance.
Sure.
I always ask after they introduce themselves and they tell where they teach and why they got into teaching. In other words, finding out about them. Then I ask for them, what do you want from this seminar?
Mm.
And it's really a matter of focusing on them and what they want. And I think the important thing is, I can't tell you I change or whatever. My basic game plan is the same, but depending on the audience and who's with you, you kind of get a feeling what you can do, what you can't do, what's going to work, what's going to get people, let's say, on your side. So
Yeah.
they either agreeing with you or they're just doing what needs to be done. So as I said, it varies with the group. And as I said, with these particular, like I have different groups of these student teachers, excuse me. Sometimes larger groups, sometimes smaller groups. And that's also a dynamic, and how involved they can get. When you see a lot of resistance, well, you try to see what is it, what can I do to maybe get them thinking. Sometimes, Mark, it's not just about their overall verbal response, but and I think an important part of communication is it's not only the words we say, it's the tone of voice, and in some cases, just the verbal or the nonverbal communication, the body language.
Mm.
And very often that's a tip off. And generally, as I said at the beginning, I go and ask every one of the participants these questions. So everybody at least gets involved at the beginning. Sometimes that helps keep them motivated. And it just kind of knowing your audience.
Yeah.
To work with them. It's what they want. And as you said with your teachers, some of them really are not giving you what you want. I mean, I play the saxophone, and my teacher is always saying to me, is always saying, okay, what do you want from this? What do you want to learn? And that to me is where it's at.
Yep.
You're with a group of people, you want to get from them what they want. And if you're not giving it to them during the course of, let's say, a program, then you make sure you address it before you leave them and they leave you.
Your saxophone teacher is a good teacher, by the way.
He's great. He's
my
great.
humble estimation. You also said earlier that you want your sessions to be interactive. Do you find that smaller groups or larger groups are more likely to get into that spirit?
You know what? Every group that I've done, I'm focusing on these youngsters from Dominican University because I've been doing them consistently over the years.
Okay.
So my memory's fresh.
Yep.
But the size doesn't really matter. It's the kinds of things that I do with them. You'll have in a bigger group, chances are there will be some people that just don't want to participate. With a smaller group, they almost sometimes feel they're obligated just by the size of it. They'll look, maybe it's, the thing that we talked about with peer. They'll look stupid if they don't participate. Or they'll look dumb or something like that. So it's gauging, and doing with them and watching them. And you're not going to reach everybody. I know that. Even with the seminar, I'm just hoping, again, my goal, and I consider my mission, is to help bring some more peace about through learning how to help people handle their own anger and the anger of others. And that's been my mission. It's something I feel very strongly about.
I admire that, and it shows. You said something toward the end of the last segment that I took to be at least potentially a double-sided coin. And I'll tell you what I mean.
Sure.
We were talking about bullies, and you said you can't give them what they want. So the first way I interpreted that was, and I was using the term submissive. I don't know if that's the right term, but I took it to mean you can't submit, you can't appear to be intimidated, and you certainly can't start conceding to or conforming to their wishes, whatever it is that they want. The other thing that occurred to me, and I'll call it the other side of the coin, is what they want might have been interpreted as whatever hole there is in them that they're trying to fill. And so when you said you can't give them what they want, unless you're whatever, a psychologist or a psychiatrist, you're not the one in all likelihood that's going to fill that void. Do you find that as well?
Well, your description was, I think, right, spot on. Saying it's the submissiveness that they want, and that whole, unless you know somebody and consistently can deal with this person, for example, and as a teacher or a counselor, you might have a different view or see this young man or woman differently. So you'll have more time to give them more input with the possibility of filling that void. But in an isolated instance where you don't know the person, you don't have a continuing relationship, it would be hard to fill that void in their life. It takes more time, more energy, and a lot of patience to really get to it. In the book, I use the idea of, you have to peel the layers of an onion. And that's like getting to really what's at the bottom of things, which takes time and patience. And most of all, this person trusting you that you're not going to hurt them or use it against them. So, I mean, it's a process to fill that desire or to meet that desire.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about this enough to consider trust. But I mean, as soon as you said it, I thought that must be crucial in at least two aspects. One, they have to trust you enough to recognize you're not going to hurt them in the ways that they're apparently accustomed to having been hurt. Right. However we define that. But to make any real progress, to make any real progress, they have to trust you enough to be willing to open up to you. And I'm just going to guess, I've never done this. When you recognize that you've gotten them to that point, that must be enormously gratifying.
Well, as a counselor, I had a lot of experiences like that. There were times that I had people that were parts of gangs coming to talk to me, not about gang affiliation, but just to talk to me. They said, we hear you're a person you can talk to and you're not judging us. And that took time. I mean, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back.
No.
But I'm giving you that as an example of gaining the trust. And then it spreads. It spreads to others, these youngsters' peers, and I felt good about that.
Yeah.
And it's part of what really gives you that, I'm doing a job.
Yeah.
And so in answer to that, that's the trust. It's building. It's seeing somebody do something consistently, not just talking the talk, but walking the talk.
Yeah.
And being there consistently, not just, I'll be there for you, and then not showing up,
Yeah. This is tangential, and I'm willing to bet you know about this, but have you ever heard of the book called The Body Keeps the Score?
No.
It's by a psychiatrist named Dr. van der Kolk. It's just enormously powerful. But it's pretty much what we're talking about. Dr. van der Kolk first started working with military and combat veterans who had come back traumatized. Right. But the more he studied and the more people he talked with, he realized there were so many other ways to define trauma, all of which had to be taken seriously and all of which had long-term effects on the people who experience that trauma. I can't remember, and I apologize if you said when you were talking about your book, P.E.A.C.E, The Other Side of Anger, is the revised edition published?
No, as I think I mentioned to you, I'm still in the process of working on it. We had some teen surveys that we're compiling, and making comments about, and I'm beginning the editing, from my own standpoint, things I want to change. And I'm hoping that it'll be out and people will be able to see it in the early fall.
Okay.
That's my goal. But I'd like to just mention, and and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk to your audience, that the violence prevention seminar and what I do is based on that, and it's kind of taking the book and making it experiential. Not every single detail, but really putting out the areas that are important. I like to, and I guess just to give you an idea, there's 3 questions that I choose to answer in the violence prevention seminar, as well as in the book. And that's what are the causes of the anger? Both those are the obvious ones, like being embarrassed or yelled at or whatever. And then the not so obvious ones, certain frustrations that you don't know or not aware of. Then there's a different, the why is what's the matter with me? How is the different effects, physical, emotional, and psychological. And then finally, what is the different techniques to use to help manage anger. So that's basically what the book is about. That's what it answers it. And that's what I try to communicate in my seminars.
Okay. I will certainly be keeping an eye peeled for that book. And I will certainly be sharing with everyone I can the fact that it's published when it's published. And I've already promised you that I will share this show with whomever is interested. Before the book is published, how can people find you, especially if they're interested in working with you, which I'm just going to say I think they should be? How can they find you?
Well, I have a website, peacefulauthor.org. Also, I have a page on Facebook, Dave Wolffe Author.
Okay.
And there's certainly, and I'm also looking for people who are willing to take training to do what I'm doing to carry on the work. Use, the seminar and things to be able to learn the process. So, and my email address kind of long, but it's peacefulyouth422@yahoo.com.
Okay. And when I share this program and the information about you, should I include that email address?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, I really want people to contact me if they have questions just about something that's happening. It's fine.
Okay.
I'm only too glad to. As I said, I'm trying to spread the peace.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you, Dave Wolffe. Thank you very much for joining me today. Please don't be surprised if I ask you to do it again. I still have a bunch of questions I'd love to talk about. So we will try to do that again. And to everybody else who joined us today, thank you. I hope you got as much out of this program as I did. And I will be back with my next show 2 weeks from today. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mark. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you. We'll be in touch. I promise.
Okay, take care. Thanks again.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into The Anxious Voyage, the program dedicated to sharing stories, helping people, and celebrating life. You can see and listen to The Anxious Voyage on syndicated Dream Vision 7 radio network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. If you have a story to tell, or if you know someone who does, please email the host, Mark O'Brien, at mark@o'briencg.com. In the meantime, please remember, the only bad stories are the ones we don't share.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.